Hello, Amy. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm glad to hear that. I'm doing fine.
That's good.
All right, good. Looks like we're the only people here so far.
Yes, as usual. It's like that at all my classes.
Oh, is it? Are you the keener in the group?
Yeah, apparently.
I see. So, Amy has an A-type personality.
I do.
No, that doesn't surprise me because you alluded to that in the past.
Yeah.
That's okay. Sometimes it's like people apologize for being who they are. Well, we're all something, right? That's how I kind of look at it. We're all a certain height, or there's certain things we can't change, or a certain age, and it is what sort of, it's one of those things we truly can't change.
Hmm.
And
I
so,
can't hear anything. Can you guys
yeah,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. I can hear somebody. So it looks like it's just three of us. So it's got to be Viviana. She's muted right now. So, how are you, Viviana? Just having a little chat with Amy. Maybe she can't hear me. Shows my mic is on. No. Amy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. Amy's probably thinking, how did I luck out? I'm the only one who could hear him. I wish it was Viviana right now. That's okay. Hello, Viviana. Not sure it worked. Wonders of modern technology, right? It's always wonderful when it's working. So I'm going to start in a moment,
Okay.
just because you showed up on time. So, all right. And you know what? Honestly, if I was a student taking courses this way, you know, there's going to definitely be times I'm going to quote skip class and I'll just listen to the recording later. And I'm totally fine with that. I even had a course, when was it? About a year and a half, but oh, a year or two ago. There was there was very small. It was smaller than this group. There was like 6 or 7 students in the course. First day I go online, nobody's there. All right, literally nobody showed up.
Yeah.
So I thinking like, what the heck? So I literally got their phone numbers from the school. I phoned every one of them or contacted them, and almost everybody said, "Oh yeah, I'm working."
Oh my God.
I'm working. So I just listened to the recordings later. And their instructor, I actually took a course over partway through because the instructor got sick and he kind of hadn't really like been communicating with the class. So it was only like a month before final exams. So what I did was I went in and I pre-recorded all of the upcoming lectures, and they sent me questions because none of them were showing up for class, or were they going to show up for class? So it's like, okay, if I would have known back then, I would have put them on YouTube. But okay, YouTube's just cats playing pianos. That's really, I had no use for YouTube until recently. All right. I'm not sure, Viviana. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
I've unmuted you. Does that help? Doesn't help. She can't hear us. I hear somebody typing. So, all right. Well, unfortunately for you, Amy, your technology is working.
Well, that's weird. Everybody was just in our class like 5 minutes ago for organizational behavior.
Okay. Oh, so you're saying I should take it personally, right?
Yeah.
I was actually going to suggest at some point because we just have the 1 hour and then we have that long class on Fridays, and now that I know we're only supposed to really meet half the time, I was actually going to make a suggestion, and we can talk about this on Friday, that Wednesday would just be a drop-in session to help with assignments and questions, and Friday we do the lecture and the discussion.
Okay.
So that way, because when I talked to Paul, he said half the time you're doing discussion and lecture, and half the time you're helping students with their assignments and giving them class time. So I think it's unfortunate they went from 1 hour Wednesday, 1 hour Thursday, 2 hours Friday to 1 and 3. But I was thinking Wednesday could just be a drop-in session for an hour. It's the end of the day. You guys, if you don't have any questions, you can go do something else. So think about that if you would like that. We can do with it whatever we want. We're still putting in our 4 hours a week.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
All right. So Viviana is now in there twice.
Yeah, I can hear you guys from my phone, but I can't hear you from my laptop. So I'm gonna use my phone as listen, so I can like
Okay.
the audio, and then the computer just to see the
Okay. Sure. All right. Excellent.
won't work, and I don't know why.
I did remember to turn the recordings on. Thank you for joining us, Viviana. And I will make a suggestion to class next time we have more than 2 of you. Okay. We don't have a quorum. Is that Tuesday? Hello, Regine. Wednesday would just be class time to work on assignments. I know that I've had a few emails on the assignment, and sort of like what we did yesterday in project management. And then Fridays, I'd be presenting the material and we'd have discussions. But since we're here and we're ready to roll, let's talk about, in this particular case, chapter number 4, hazard recognition, risk assessment, and control. One of the courses I took at university was risk management. This is a big part of actually even project management. When we get to chapter, I think it's 6 or 7 in project management, we're going to talk about risks. And so you need to identify this in your workplace. We need to talk about the terminology, identifying workplace hazards. Some of them are obvious. A few years ago, I taught some welding students. I taught them project management. And one of the things that they were very well aware, welding is a very dangerous field. You've got obviously the flame, you have flammable material, and hot items like hot steel or whatever the case may be. So, and then so you need to identify the sources of workplace hazards. They went through that extensively in their other courses. So risk is very important. It's my second favorite 4-letter word. My favorite 4-letter word, by the way, is cash. All right. Although one of my students told me recently that my favorite 4-letter word was food. Okay. I think that's kind of amusing. All right. But identifying workplace hazards and risks. That's what we're going to talk about here. So we need to identify, is it the people, the equipment, the environment, the materials, or the process for making something? Is it the way we're making a particular product that's dangerous or potential? Now, you can see in this case that you can do something that causes risk. You can have poor judgment, which you can hopefully train people, or you're not doing something. And an unsafe act is simply a derivation from the standard. Somebody gets careless, somebody cuts a corner, somebody doesn't do something, or they do something they shouldn't. you know, like something as simple as turning off, you know, we talked about barbecues, I believe, the other day, right? How to turn off a barbecue properly. You turn off the tank. When you go to light the barbecue, you open the lid to make sure that any gases, if you've forgotten to turn off the tank, any gases that have built up underneath the hood or the cover of the barbecue are, you know, go up into the atmosphere. So it's with also people, I like this phrase. One of the companies I go on tours of is they deal with very hot steel. They take steel and they turn it into metal springs. And so what they have to do, of course, they have these furnaces which go in the hundreds of degrees centimeter, or sorry, not centimeter, Celsius. They go into hundreds of degrees to be able to heat treat the metal so they can bend it. They have a policy there that anything, all steel is supposed to be treated as if it's hot. They also have a policy there, and I love this phrase, I'm going to steal from them. Engineer out the human factor. Okay? So I want you people, the three of you, to sort of visualize this. Okay? You're standing at a press. Now, a press, in case you don't know what it does, it compresses things, or it can punch holes in steel. I'm sure you can appreciate that if you're punching a hole in a piece of metal, it has to be pretty powerful, right? You know, if you've ever done that, it's be equivalent to driving a hammer into wood, except now you're punching a hole in sometimes steel that's a couple inches thick. That has to be very powerful. I'm sure you can appreciate very quickly what that would do to somebody's anatomy, what that would do to your hand if you accidentally get careless and you have your hand underneath this. I don't try not to be too graphic about it. So what they used to have, you would stand there, and for efficiency, you'd have a control, a remote control. And you would push the button on the remote control and the press would come down. Well, all you have to do is get distracted or get careless once, and you turn and you leave your hand there, or somebody comes by and says hi, and now your hand doesn't work anymore. So what they did was this. So rather than, and it's very, in fact, they tried to be non-efficient about this. So rather than a person standing right beside the press, within arm's reach of the press, with the control, where they used to push the button, the press would come down. What they did was they took that controller and they placed it, I don't know, 6 feet away. They put it actually on the wall. So what you have to do now is you have to put the piece of metal in the press. You have to take a step or two over to the control and push the button. So you are wasting time, but it's a safer practice. So they put the button. Let's try and pretend you were trying to hurt yourself for some reason. They put the button far enough away that you cannot accidentally or even on purpose put your hand underneath the press. Okay? So what they did was they call it, and I love this phrase, engineer out the human factor. You could do this not 1,000 times, but 1,000,000 times. And in essence, what they're trying to do is make it, pardon my expression, idiot proof. They're trying to make it so that person cannot hurt themselves accidentally or even on purpose. So they used to have the button close enough to the press that a person could push the button, and because the person was standing right beside the press, hurt themselves. They moved the button, I don't know, like I said, it was 2 meters away, it was whatever, far enough away, the person would have to move, take a step or two away. I think it was like 2 steps away, and they couldn't reach the press anymore. So they put the piece of metal spring, or the metal spring under a piece of steel, They're turning it into a spring. They'd put it under the press. They'd have to take a couple steps over to push the button, and then they'd have to go back to the spring. They did that purely. That reduces productivity. What they did, though, was no matter it now makes it almost impossible. I don't like to say it is impossible, but it makes it incredibly difficult for somebody to get hurt with that machine, the operator. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Okay. So there, if you follow the standard job procedures and practices that you people in HR would be involved with, along with your operations people, to make sure that the practices are following what is prescribed. That'll be one of the things that is in an HR position, if that's your field, you'll get involved in analyzing workplace health and safety. And you'll be able to say, what was the policy? Did the employee follow the policy? Do we need to change the procedure? And some of the risk factors are the people. Were they properly trained to use that equipment? Those things are very important. If you go and put somebody who is an operator on a piece of equipment that isn't trained, guess what's going to happen? Two things. Your product that you're going to make is probably going to be defective or have a higher defect rate, and the chances of that person getting hurt is much higher. So that's the people aspect. Equipment. You have to be, you have to be aware, is the equipment defective? Like you can see, they've got a broken ladder, unguarded saw blades in a butcher shop. This company, again, with the metal springs, which is probably the most dangerous tour I take my students on, not dangerous in the chance that a student could get injured, but they go through a safety protocol. They literally have lines on the floor that students are supposed to stay in, and they do. They have people watching that. But also, one of the things that they put into place is they put guards on things so that you don't get a piece of loose clothing get caught in a machine and things along this line. So the equipment is important, especially if the equipment starts to wear out or doesn't have the proper safeguards in place. Another example of the equipment, it's also tied in with people and equipment. One of the tours I take my students on is the Walmart warehouse here in Calgary. And for many years, we were asked to do this. As part of the tour, there was a part of the process where there was a conveyor belt with the boxes going on it. We used to step over that conveyor belt. All right? We used to step over it. Now, all these boxes are going. One box every 2 seconds on average. All right? So picture that in your head. All these boxes, but occasionally there'd be a gap. And some of the boxes are like a few centimeters tall, so they're not particularly high. I always personally felt a bit uncomfortable with that. And I remember one time I had a student who had some physical mobility issues. And I was very concerned about that student stepping over this conveyor system. Well, fairly recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, we no longer, occupational health and safety came along and said, when you are giving tours, they probably like their employees to do it, but it's a shortcut. When you are giving tours, you are not supposed to be stepping over that conveyor belt. You have to take a detour around. So if the equipment had like an overpass, okay? I'm sure you've got them. You've seen them in like Winnipeg, is where, a set of stairs you go up and you walk across the road and you go down like an overpass that way. Then That's what they should have had there. I always felt uncomfortable with that. So that's a condition of people and equipment, at least in my opinion. But if you had a guard, or in this case, a couple steps up and then a couple steps down, I would have felt comfortable with that. Like a bridge, right? Too dark, too light. Anybody have an example where there's poor air quality, poor exhaust, things along this line from your work? Has anybody worked in a place where you've had to wear safety glasses? You've had to wear not so much safety glasses in this case, but anybody ever had to work in a place where they've had to have breathing apparatus? Or in today's world, what's the rule in Manitoba right now? What's the rule in Portage for masks?
Some places are mandatory, some aren't.
Okay. In the city of Portage la Prairie, it's up to the business.
As far as I know, yeah, but it's getting more and more that you have to wear them. So.
Okay. In August in Calgary, it became a city bylaw that you must wear masks while you're in an indoor public area. So if you go to the mall, if you go anywhere where it's indoors, it's mandatory and you'll get fined if you do not. The only time you're allowed to take your mask off is if you're at a restaurant, which only are allowed to have 50% capacity. And a lot of restaurants have put up plexiglass in between the booths, and is obviously to take it off when you are eating. I know that in the malls where they have the food courts now, they've taken out a lot of the seats, and they ask you to leave your garbage, your drink container and your wrappers or whatever on the where the seat and the table are. So I'm sure you can appreciate that if a place is not properly lit, that can be a hazard. Even if you have too much glare, I'm sure you've been in a car sometimes, and especially at sunrise and sunset, the glare makes it very dangerous and it causes accidents. Poor exhaust or ventilation systems, right? Hot furnaces. There's people who pass out because of the heat. That company I mentioned with the metal springs, one of the things that, of course, is to make sure there are water fountains around for people. There's a lot of water fountains along so people can hydrate. My former stepson worked in the construction industry, and one hot summer day, they'd been on a roof, and one of their people got to get up and have suffered like dizziness and fell off the roof. Right? Very tragic accident. They were severely injured. And so you need to be careful of that. There's certain places I work where you're only allowed to work for a certain length of time, and then it's mandatory you take a break because people can pass out. Or certain people, to go back here, this is a bit about, all right? Hang on a sec. Going the wrong way. There we are. Also, certain situations where you have to be, I know one place at the mine, women of childbearing age were not allowed to work. Not as a sexist thing, but there was concerns that the chemicals in the air would cause damage to a woman's reproductive system. And so, that's part of the environment. So materials can cause like cleaning supplies, ammonia, bleach together, how you store them. One company I used to take my students on tours of, Unfortunately, they've moved out of Calgary. They had paint and varnish. If you know anything about certain paints and varnish, they are highly flammable and could be even potentially like explosive. They had those stored behind a specially built firewall, like literally a firewall, so that if there was a spark or an ignition, it would be contained, that fire would be contained because it was very dangerous chemicals. So who in this room knows? Who in this room knows? Viviana, I think you might know, if you can share, or anybody else where you've been in a place where you cannot store, or you do it in your own home, where you make sure that two products are not side by side. When you bag groceries, they do this. What do they do when you bag your groceries? It's related here, people. Do they put the
They
oh,
put
go
all
ahead.
like the products, like all the products, like food in one bag and like cleaning supplies in another bag, so they don't mix match them in one, put them in one bag. Like you wouldn't put a bread with like say Javix. Oh,
Great answer, Regine. That's exactly what I was looking for. And those people at the till, who we think are just sitting there scan, depending on which store you go to, those people have to get trained on that to make sure that they bag things properly, that they don't put, like you said, Ajax with your pork chops. That you don't, and in your case, the bread. Absolutely correct. And of course, that's why, some people in their own homes, some people will have a bathroom with a laundry room. Some people don't like that because of the germs that when you have in a bathroom, and then you're trying to wash your clothes. So you know how a house is laid out. And so anyways, the materials and contamination. When shipments are sent from the Walmart warehouse out to the stores, there's certain items they have to be careful to not have next to each other because they're sending pallets of Ajax or chemicals with food. They have to keep them separate from each other. It's not just go and load the truck and here you go. It's the same kind of thing, just on a bigger scale. Processes. All right. So again, this has to do with the processes and procedures. So in your life, somewhere in your life, somebody want to share an example where there's a certain process for doing something, certain processes you're given, instructions, training that you've had at work or even in your personal life? I'm going to wait until somebody ventures to share a thought or an idea. What is something you do in your personal life or at work that you have to do in a certain order?
Like my morning routine, I guess.
And specifically with the purpose of trying to make sure it's a safe procedure.
Oh.
I think like when I worked at co-op, when I worked at the gas bar, they had a procedure to fill up the propane tanks.
Thank you. Yep. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm sure that people have examples.
I was going to use putting gas in your vehicle as an example because you have to make sure your vehicle's shut off so it doesn't spark to start a fire.
Nope.
And then Regine mentioned that. So I was like, well, there's one thing that I usually make sure I do.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely that you do. Regine came up with a very good example. Now tell me what you think of this. When my daughter was young, okay, and I was taking care of her one day, I turned on the taps. She was too young to turn on the taps herself, to go wash her hands. And she went to put her hands underneath, and it was really hot. What did I do wrong?
You didn't like test the water first? Like,
Right. I know Jennifer has kids. I don't know if any of the rest of you do. Should I not have the procedure be turn on the water, get the person, in this case my daughter, should not the procedure I should have used, put my hand underneath the tap to test the temperature of the water? That's a procedure, right?
Yes. You can also adjust the temperature on your hot water tank to make sure that it never goes beyond a certain point.
Right? Yes, absolutely. You can do that. To even go back, I just thought about this. There's people in their homes, and you might laugh at them if you don't have small kids yourself. They will go and they'll put, I just thought of this, and you tell me what you think of this. Because I think sometimes it helps to relate it to if like your own personal lives, not just some abstract, company that makes metal springs. So tell me about this. What do you think about, and I'm sure you've seen it, people, especially when they have small kids, because you can't always have them in eyesight, or you don't want to. They put devices on, say, their cupboards, that the kids cannot open the cupboards. So the kids cannot get access to the WebEx, right? That they cannot get access to the cleaning supplies. You can put the cleaning supplies up high, so when the children are small, they can't actually physically reach it. Has anybody ever seen somebody do that, gone into a home and say, well, that's kind of different? Like they've got these almost like lock things on the, has anybody ever done something like that to child-proof it?
Yeah, I've child-proof my house. You can even have like covers on your door so that like a child can't just walk up and turn the doorknob.
Okay.
I have locks on my cupboards. Like I'm made little locks for my cupboards because my cat likes to go in there. So
Mm-hmm.
so I have those.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. They design certain containers to make them, what do they call them, child-proof? For sometimes they're adult-proof too, right? For where you've got to squeeze it and turn it and stuff like this. I remember seeing an article on this. This is not something new. This is something they discovered in like artifacts from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, which were basically made it childproof. You do not want to come home and find a child who's got a chemical on their face and has been ingesting it. Right? As a parent, that would just be an incredibly horrible feeling. And so, yeah, it's not quite the same, but there's friends of mine, they have a little dog and they come to visit me, and I like the little dog. And so when they come to visit, his name is Stewie, I Stewie-proof the place. I close the door to my bedroom. I close the door to the laundry room. So it limits where he can go. To me, it's the same kind of thing as having a child. You try and prevent the problem, right? Prevention is way less money than curing. Prevention prevents the person from getting injured. And just like seat belts are mandatory for two reasons. They reduce the severity of injuries in an accident, and they save the healthcare system and society significant dollars. All right? Seat belts are done in the same way as a safeguard. And now what do we have in cars? You people wouldn't even think about it. If you could go out and buy a car that didn't have airbags, you probably wouldn't buy it. Bike helmets. You're the bike helmet generation, right? You wouldn't even think to go riding your bike without a helmet on, right? And elbow pads and knee pads and everything else. So you need to identify, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say not now, but when I was younger,
Okay.
I don't wear a helmet when I'm biking.
All right. Yes. And that's fine. Some adults do, some adults don't. All right. But heck, is it not the parents who get fined? Right? Would you, if you were going down the street, Amy, and you're on your bike, or any of you, and you see like a young kid without a bike, you say, oh, what bad parents. Right? You just, I don't know what the age is, 16 or something, where it's mandatory. So now that you are not 16 anymore.
I think some other ones would be like to keep a fire extinguisher and like have emergency exits kind of like labeled or whatever in a workplace.
Those are also excellent examples, Crystal.
Like a first aid kit, stuff like that.
Yep. And we'll get into this as we get into the course. Yes. First aid kit, eye wash stations. You mentioned about the lighting. I'm glad you did that. Like, I know that I would assume most of you have been on a plane. Unfortunately, hopefully this will never occur, where if the plane is in distress, there will be a lighting, like a lighting track. Has anybody ever gone on a cruise ship? Has anybody ever gone on a cruise? It is mandatory. I tried to get out of it one time. I got caught. It is mandatory that before you leave the port, that all cruise ships go through and explain to you, where are the lifeboats? Where are the life preservers, like the vests? Where your station is. One of the things at Red River College, I looked at it the other day. It is a pretty small building you guys have. But if you were in a class and the fire alarms went off, where are you supposed to congregate? I know that as an instructor, what my responsibility is for the class. If the fire alarms were to go in a class and we were in a physical class, I haven't been trained at Red River on this, but I know this from all the schools I teach at. I, as the instructor, am supposed to be the last person out of the room. I am responsible for making sure that all people are out of the room. If I have a student, and I've had students who are physically challenged, shall we say, like say they're in a wheelchair and you're on the second or seventh floor of a building, you're not supposed to use the elevators. You have to find ways to get them out of the building. And I think we all know that if there's a fire, don't use the elevator, whether you live in an apartment building or not. So, and I do like to talk about personal, like hazard identification, not just workplace. What I try to do with that, in the same as my supply chain courses, is I try to make it not some abstract something I have no experience at. If I sit there and I ask Crystal or Regine or Amy or Viviana, I say, do you have any experience doing workplace health and safety? I see you took a course. No, I have no experience at it. That is not correct. I want you people to realize how much experience you have. From Regine's comments about propane to hazard proofing to Amy with your locks to your cat, right? And the Crystal's examples with having lighting. You have experience with it, people. Don't tell me you don't have workplace health and safety experience. Maybe it hasn't been for a big formal company. Who's a major employer in Portage la Prairie? Cargill or somebody like that, or
Simplot.
Simplot. What Simplot is agriculture, right?
Yeah, it's a potato processing plant.
Okay. All right. So experience with that. So I'm interviewing you, and part of your job is going to be sitting on workplace health and safety. I see you took a course in that. Yes, I did. Do you have any experience in that area? Please don't sit there and say, no, I don't. You do. So I've had lots of students say, I have no experience in supply chain. Even though you're not supply chain students, you do. Well, way more experience than what you may realize. So I don't know if that resonates with you people, but you need to identify hazards. You do this in life. You identify the hazards. In this case, we're specifically talking about a workplace. In fact, one of the advantages you might have when you start brand new at a company is you just don't assume, you question things that they've been doing for years. Like that example of us stepping over the conveyor belt. Why was that allowed? I always felt awkward about it. And maybe it was a new person who came along. It certainly wouldn't have been, they even said it was the Workplace Health and Safety Committee said we can't be doing that anymore. It's a safer practice. As far as I'm aware, nobody ever tripped. But do you wait till somebody trips and hurts themselves? Do you stop? No. All right. So going through walkthrough surveys as one of the best ways to do it is just look around. All right. So you need to know what to identify, take a look at the job and the specifications, how to perform various functions. There's going to be risk. You cannot have zero risk. What you can do is manage the risk. You look at audits. You look at frequency. If let's say that you're brand new to the job, the first thing you should probably do is pull out the minutes from the previous occupational health and safety meetings. Look at things like the reports. How often is an incident occurring? Right? How often is an accident occurring? And gather data on this. One of the companies I took tours of, they found that, I forget, 80% of the injuries were to hands and arms. And 80% of their injuries in the building were employees who'd been there 3 months or less. So there was a point where before they would allow you onto the shop floor, you spent 3 entire days getting training to try and reduce those costs, the workers' compensation costs. They dramatically reduced the injuries, and as their claims for lost time injury went down, they saved tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. So find out where the injuries are occurring, why they're occurring. They said the vast majority is like hands and arms. Fine. The vast majority, if I remember, it was like 70, 80%, are new employees. So what do you need to do? Spend more time doing safety training. Would you agree with that? Of like new employees? There's a tempt, it could be tempted, just get them out on the floor. We're paying them anyways. Get them doing something. So if I was asked to be for Simplot, if I was asked starting next week to be the in charge of workplace health and safety, I do 2 things. I literally take with a guided. I take a look around the facility, make notes as to what I think might be hazardous operations, and then I would go and look at the history that we have and see if there's anything that I can come up with, that there's a trend, that why is this injury always happening on this particular machine? Do we need to change the machine? Do we need to change the process? Do we need to train the people? Is there something we can do? There might be some companies you will go to work for. They're very slack about health and safety. Other companies are fanatical about it. I told you the story about the manager at Amazon who unloaded a truck and then reported that he had unloaded it in an unsafe way, that there was a safety hazard that he decided to ignore. They fired him. They didn't say, don't do it again. We're going to write you up. He lost his job. And he was very high up in the organization. They don't want people getting hurt. When I take my students on a tour of that spring company, the company that makes metal springs, this is their phrase. We want all employees and all guests to leave the facility at the end of the day in the same condition, if not better than when they arrived. In other words, we don't want to get anybody hurt. I love that phrase. Their goal is that everybody, including students who come on a tour, when they leave, is in the same condition or better. And better would be they learned. They do not want anybody to go home who's worse off. And they have dramatically cut down on their injuries. It's a very hazardous, was a very hazardous company to work for. And they're the company that moved the button for the press. They had done it for years one way, and people were getting hurt. So how do we go in and fix that? I love that phrase, engineering out the human factor. So you've got how the job should be done, all the things that can go wrong. So the positive and the fault tree, right? So here's an example, not wearing safety glasses, machine operating, no glasses, machine not shut off, a whole bunch of examples of a fault tree. You need to look at the risk, the probability, which is the frequency, and the severity or the consequences. You people take risk all the time. You go and you decide, I'm going to go sit in my backyard. Oh, there's no risk to that. Oh, yes, there is. Mosquitoes, getting stung by a bee, or wasps, as I had by my deck this summer. And I get the wasp people to come and get rid of the wasps. So for about 10 days, I couldn't go on my deck. Now, would have I survived the injury if I got stung? Yes. Would I have got stung a lot? Possibly. When I was a kid, I actually walked into a nest and they got in my clothes and yeah, it was very painful. So what is the probability that the event, which is the frequency, and what's the severity or the consequences? Anybody in this room has severe allergies? I was reminded of that on the weekend, right? Somebody said they didn't like seafood. So we ordered this plate and it had some seafood on it. I thought, okay, I'll eat it, right? Shrimp. No, and they didn't eat any of it. I said, what's going on? No, if I eat that, I will die. Can't even touch it. If anybody's got gluten or gluten-free, still hazards. And again, so there's a risk form for you. The hazard, the risk, the priority, the controls. Injuries, trauma, physical or mental. Overt trauma injuries resulting from coming into contact with an energy source. There's a guy back home at the mine. He's an electrician. He thought there was no power in a line. I think they went to cut into the line. It melted his hard hat onto his head. It took him, he had to get skin grafts, and I don't want to go overly graphic if I haven't already, right? Overexertion industry, injuries. So this could be like people who play sports, right? And carpal tunnel or awkward moving. It hurts people's backs. Right. Here's some examples: struck by overhead falling objects, dropping materials. This is why you wear steel-toed boots, right? Caught in between machinery, hauling, etc. Too much lifting. Use that as an excuse next time you're trying to be lazy. Hey, I want you to help me lift this. Oh no, that's suffer an overexertion injury. What do you mean? It's if you lift something over and over and over again, that's going to be hard on your back. I know you people as younger people may not realize that, but if you do that for years, right? All right. All right. Repetitive stress injuries, unnatural positions, having to stand. We're not made to stand all day. We're not made to sit all day. With COVID, are you finding yourself sitting more than you were before? I'm assuming that you people are sitting right now. Except for maybe Viviana who's on her phone.
Yeah, I'm sitting.
Okay. Has anybody found something? Has that caused you discomfort? Too much sitting? Anybody?
Yeah, I think it's very uncomfortable to sit for more than a couple hours every day. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And well, on planes, if anybody's ever been on a long plane ride, they say one of the things you should do is get up every once in a while and take a walk around. Get your body moving. Get like their blood flowing and stuff like this. I would even say too, and I actually ordered them, they should be here any day. One of the things I am personally finding, and yeah, my back hurts from sitting so much, and I'm getting actually treatments on that. But the other thing that I'm getting, and I don't know if you people are getting this, eye stress from the screens, from the glare from the screen. So somebody told me about this, and one of the things I did, my eyes hurt. And one of the things I did about 2 weeks ago is I went and I ordered blue light glasses. I wear glasses, so I have to get prescription ones. And they are to help with eye strain from the glare of monitors. Like I've got this big monitor, which I love, but I have all this glare and my eyes literally hurt. Are any of you suffering the same thing? Like, are you finding your eyes hurting?
Yeah, last year when we moved to online, it was like hard because I'll get headaches all the time and stuff like that. So this year I ordered the blue light glasses.
Okay.
It helped a lot. Like I don't have any headaches or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it really helps.
Do you wear glasses, Viviana, or you?
No, I don't wear glasses, but the computer, because I spend so much time in the computer, so then,
Okay.
and my phone as well. So then I'll get headaches and just like my eyes will hurt. And then I notice, like I was looking online and then I saw the blue light glasses and they help with that. So I order them and it's so good. They don't have any prescription or anything. They're just from Amazon.
Okay. No,
They're
fair
so
enough.
good.
Thank you very much. I noticed a couple other people would like to comment. Or maybe not. That's fine. I didn't honestly know about blue light glasses until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And one of my friends, he mentioned that his girlfriend, well, they live together, whatever, is working from home a lot. And she does not wear glasses, but she bought, like Viviana, she bought the blue light glass. She said, oh, it helps so much. So now I personally wear glasses. So I went, within a couple days, I went to the optometrist that I deal with, and I went and I ordered some blue light glasses, and they should be here literally any day. And I mentioned it to a friend of mine who had never heard of them. I was talking to him just over a week ago, and we were talking, and he does kind of what I do. And I said, John, just out of curiosity, your eyes, you finding the stress from the screens, just sitting in front of a computer all the time? Your eyes? Yeah, he says, I do. I says, you may want to consider getting blue light glasses. He said, what are those? So you people are ahead of me in that regard. I really am looking forward to getting them. Because I know in this case we're talking about physical, but this is, I bet you can imagine what's happened. The sale of blue light glasses has increased in the last 6 months. Because even in a normal workday, I would not spend nearly as much time in front of a computer screen, especially on Wednesdays. Wednesdays are my long days. Wednesdays are, I'm on the computer for doing what we're doing right now for about 7 hours a day on Wednesdays. I don't have a choice. I can't, I can walk around. I can have a wireless headset. I can get up and walk around. Then I can't see the screen. All right. Awkward positioning. I think a lot of this is fairly straightforward. 3 levels of intervention. Prevention is what you really want, and not correction. You want to control the pre-contact control. You want to control the contact point, and then, of course, afterwards. So addressing issues before the incident or the accident. That's where you want to be. You want to prevent the accident. If you cannot avoid the contact, then perhaps, if workers cannot avoid the contact with the hazard, right, that metal spring still needs to be lifted. Then you find ways to protect themselves. Every single one of you in this room has worn gloves for a reason, or even if you don't have glasses, you put on safety glasses. When I worked at the mine as a summer student, one of the things I had to get, and they paid for it, were prescription safety glasses. When we go on tours, we wear all the students wear safety glasses. One of the things they had forgotten, the school that I worked for bought them. One of the things they didn't factor in was people who have glasses like I do. So they only bought safety glasses for people like Viviana, and others of you who don't wear glasses. They didn't fit very well over people who wear glasses. So fortunately, the place we go on a tour has safety glasses that fit over top of the actual glasses themselves. You need that. You can't, they will not allow you to go on the tour unless you're wearing safety glasses. Absolutely not. Well, there's certain parts of the tour we cannot go on because we don't have steel-toed boots for everybody. Although we just recently bought those clip-on styles, all right? And then cleanup procedures, right? Putting in medical and cleanup procedures. So this is just hazard control, isolation, safety policies and procedures, machine guards, retrofitting, point of contacts, suppression, barriers, modifications, etc. And then again, all of these other post-contract control areas or steps. Lock out the machinery if there's an accident. Keep unauthorized people away. Yes, on and on. Engineering control, modify the work process and equipment. These companies have engineers and they'll try and design. Part of what an engineer does is not just design the actual physical item, but the way it should be put together. And so, that company will sometimes have a person do a job that's very repetitive, very hard in the back, but that person does it for 2 hours. Then for the rest of the day, they go and do something else. Having equipment that actually lifts something heavy. How many of you have seen in your at your grocery stores? Have you ever? I was sure they would have them Portage. Any of you ever seen the? Somebody will go out and get the carts and then push them into the store. Now those carts can get heavy, especially if there's snow. And in this particular case, have any of you seen? It hasn't been that many years, but they're motorized, so that a person doesn't have to physically push them. It's like a power cart. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they have them at the Walmart here.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure it makes it a whole lot easier for the person to go out and get the carts, put them in. Maybe they can push more carts at one time, but they get equipment to do it. Get robots. One of the things robots are best at are items that are very difficult for humans. Robots can go into certain areas that would be very unsafe. All right. So here's an example. Machine guards. So, if the bits of metal comes flying up, looks like this has all kinds of bits of metal. This piece of plastic at the top is no different than the mask that most of us are wearing these days. All right. Involve management, train your employees, rotation. Remember the repetitive stress? I was actually shocked. I'd gone on this tour for well over 10 years. And when we had a new person giving us the presentation, it came up, and I had assumed that every couple of weeks maybe they have somebody go from a job to another. They said, oh no, it's every couple of hours. If a job is very physically difficult, where you're lifting something heavy, having to turn it, it's very boring and monotonous. It's also very hard on your back. So they actually, as part of their occupational health and safety, train the person how to lift it properly, how to turn it properly, like move your whole body. And they'll only have those people actually do that job for, 1 to 4 hours in a day, depending on how hard it is on your back. The goal is to protect individuals. How many of you like that phrase? The phrase that I mentioned about our goal is to have I gone overtime? I think I have. Today's class is only an hour, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop here and I'll finish off on Friday. The goal is to have people leave at the end of the day in the same condition, if not better, than when they arrived in the morning. So I'll finish off on Friday. I'm going to make a note to myself that this is where I left off. All right. Any questions or comments for me? By the way, I brought it up if you weren't in class at the very beginning of class today. All right, about the fact that, where did my notes go? Anyways, about perhaps on Wednesday, and we'll talk about it on Friday and make a decision, that starting next week, Wednesday would be like question and answer for assignments. And that Friday, I do the presentations and the discussions. Can't believe I can't find my notes. Anyways, let me know what you think of that. Any questions I can answer before we go?
I don't have any questions so far.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see you on Friday then.
Bye.
Good, thank
All right.
you.
Sorry I went a little overtime today. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Ciao.
See you on Friday morning.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.